Big hello to you. I hope I find you well. It's great to see you again. Welcome back to the channel up here in the loft on Weir Yard. I'm Jennifer Kirk, and today I'm going to be taking you through my top 10 favourite Bachmann locomotives. Now, I'm sure that this is an area where each and every one of you has your own opinion on what your favourite 10 are, and I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. See if you can guess what my top 10 might be. It'd be really interesting to see whether any of you can read me like a book and figure out what locomotives I really love from my collection. And certainly you can go back through all of the videos and see where each and pretty much every one of these locomotives has been introduced in a review video, so you probably get a good idea of what I thought about each locomotive back then. But today I've compiled them into a special top 10 list. So come with me in association with Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Check them out today at tramfabrique.nl or tramfabrique.co.uk. Today's video also comes with the support of PD Models, makers of a whole range of 3D printed kits and accessory detailing that brings something special to your model layout. So without further ado, let's take a look at the 10 locomotives from Bachmann that I have picked as my favourites. It's taken a while to try and compile my top 10 favourite Bachmann locomotives. And the reason for this is quite simply there's so many in my collection that I really do like. And I did initially try and get this to be a top 5, but in all truth I just couldn't do that. So it became a top 10, and at the number 10 spot I picked the standard Class 4 tank locomotive. Now I do have a couple of these in my collection, and this one here is 80118. This was actually the first one that I bought, and I can remember going right back to childhood. I really loved my Hornby 00264 tanks. I had 80054 and never did quite get 80059, and for some reason never got 80033 either. And I have asked Bachmann, and they've never actually released any of those three identities, which is a great disappointment, because I think certainly 80054 and 80033 would be popular sellers to the retro nostalgia crowd, but I'm quite happy to put this in at number 10. At number 9, I went for one which is probably a little bit off the wall, just insofar as the fact that this was a model rail special commission. They commissioned this from Bachmann, so it does still count. And it's quite a quirky little tank, the Yank tank as they got nicknamed. They were brought over during the Second World War, built places like the Baldwin Locomotive Company, and were really successful at what they did, so much so that they found a home on British Rail afterwards, well, initially at the Southern Railway, but then British Rail, and were very successful around the Southampton docks until they in turn were replaced by the Class 07 shunters. But there were other users. The NCB had some, and also the Longmoor Military Railway had this particular one. And also Bachmann did a number of the other liveries. The LMR Longmoor Military Railway one, number 300, Frank Ross, has been the one that caught my eye and that I purchased. They also did one in the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway in-house livery, which was one of those things that some preserved lines did right back at the beginning. They actually had their own corporate colours, and preservation heritage liveries kind of came later. But I've put this in at number 9. For number 8, we go right back to the release of the Bachmann 04, which was initially the Robinson 8K, designed for the Great Central Railway, found a lot of success during the First World War, as the Rail Operations Division standard heavy freight locomotive, and that ensured that it would be a long-lived survivor because so many were made and they got everywhere. They really were a jack of all trades and got all around the world, and certainly a number of these did end up in Australia. In fact, 2 of the 3 preserved examples were run extensively on I think it was the John Brown Railway in a heavy freight haulage out in Australia, lasting right through into the 1970s, which was testament to just how successful a design these were. This is a model of the one that was preserved as part of the National Collection, I guess because of its success and heritage as the Rail Operations Division locomotive. They were actually used on a number of different railways. The Great Central Railway, obviously, initially, and then after the war they passed into LNER ownership. But the London and North Western Railway also had a number. Bachmann have produced a model of that. I believe the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway had some. The Caledonian Railway, I'm thinking, may have had some too. So I think a number did initially pass through into LMS ownership, but were quickly withdrawn because they were effectively just run into the ground. A similar story for the Great Western Railway, although they did westernise a number of them. The ones which did survive went through Swindon and got a number of Great Western Railway features, and Bachmann have produced a version of that as well. They lasted to British Rail days, but none of the westernised versions have survived. But I'm going to put this in at number 8. Number 7 in my list, I just had to go for this. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with the production Deltix model. I do have 55020 Nimbus, but for some reason it just never seemed to quite be on the money for me, so never managed to fall in love with that. Certainly I'm looking forward to the Acura Scale 55, but when it came to the prototype Deltix that Bachmann produced for the National Railway Museum, it's a completely different story. This model for me is perfect. It really is a great standout performer, and it's just been faultless, and it does capture the look of the prototype Deltix so well. So I've had no hesitation to put this in at number 7. As we go down to number 6, we finally get into the diesel shunters. Now, everybody probably knows by now that I am a huge fan of diesel shunter locomotives, and smaller the better. I'm really looking forward to the Class 02 that is forthcoming from a manufacturer, but the Class 03 shunter has a great charm for me, and I particularly like the fact that some of them survived long enough to get some more interesting liveries. Probably the most interesting during British Rail days is 03179. With her cut-down cab, she was one of the 2 Class 3 shunters that were resident on the Isle of Wight for hauling engineers' trains, along with 03079, and both of those locomotives do actually survive, but 03179, being dual-braked, I believe, had quite a long life and ended up being reinstated and being the only Class 3 in mainline service right through until I think it was about 2002, something like that, at Hornsey Train Care Depot. But this model was produced as an exclusive for Model Zone, and really, for me, I just had to have it, and I fell in love with the Class 3 shunter, so I've put this in as my number 6 choice. There's quite a lot of other locomotives that I could have chosen from, and certainly I think people might be surprised to find that some of the ones that they might expect to be in my top 10 aren't. But one that is, at the number 5 slot, is the Super D, the G2A model that Bachmann brought out actually quite some time ago now. So long ago, in fact, that the tender doesn't actually have any tender pickups that I can tell. but it doesn't really affect its performance, and this locomotive has been a faultless performer in my collection. I do actually have two of them. There's this one with the factory weathered finish, but also the preserved example in a pristine livery too, both of which have been faultless performers. And actually it's a pleasure to watch this 080 locomotive just crawl around the layout, and it doesn't seem to be fazed by heavy loads at all. In terms of design, Bachmann got this one absolutely right. It's just a shame that they didn't tool up for the earlier boilered versions, which would have allowed the earlier LMS liveries, and also the London and North Western Railway liveries to have been produced prototypically accurately. Nonetheless, this is a firm favourite of mine, and I've put it in at number 5 in my top 10 list. At number 4, we go back to the diesel locomotives, and for me, the Class 25 is one that I just really do love these. I have around 12 of them in my collection, might even be more actually when I think about it, and they've again worn a number of different liveries throughout their life, and I have examples in two-tone green, also BR rail blue with D number, and small yellow panels. I've got the chromatic blue version with a D number on the side, through to the tops blue liveries, and then I've also got the Ethel in that very eye-catching intercity livery. And for me, that makes it quite special that one of my favourite locomotives did at least wear my favourite livery for diesel locomotives from the sectorisation period. Albeit as an electric train heat X locomotive or Ethel, but nonetheless it certainly makes the cut. Now Bachmann have produced the 25-1, the 25-2 and the 25-3, and I guess technically the 25-9 as well, if you count the Tamworth Castle model that they produced as a special for Model Zone in the ice cream van livery, although I don't think that there were any detail differences between the 25-9 and the previous iterations of the 25. It was just a convenience of a numbering system to take account for the fact that the locomotives were intended for a specific traffic flow that in actual fact never materialized. But even though I know that there is an all-new retooled version coming along, I still like this previous tooled version from Bachmann, which nearly 20 years old now, but I do feel it still holds its own, and I've got no hesitation in making it my number 4. At number 3, we have a new entry, although not really a surprise, given that how well this scored when I reviewed it, and I would like to thank Rails of Sheffield for loaning me these review samples. This is the improved Precedent, which is done in conjunction with Rails of Sheffield, the National Railway Museum and Bachmann, and it's produced a very, very beautiful locomotive, not least in this LMS maroon livery, which for me has been the standout from all of the liveries that have been announced from them, more so in fact than the London and North Western Railway examples, which I would have thought would have caught my eye more, but this is just a beautiful locomotive in a very beautiful livery that it suits so well. So really it is a new entry straight on in to number 3. I'd love to hear from you in the comments and see if you agree with my choices so far. Would you have put them in a different order? In fact, are there locomotives that you were just screaming at the screen that you think that I should have included here that have been missed off? I'd love to hear from you. Please do write in the comments down below. Do you agree with the choices that I've picked so far? Again, I would love to hear from you. But let's just move on now. And what's in the number 2 slot? Well, actually, this might come as a little bit of a surprise for a number of people, because for so long, this has been my self-proclaimed favourite Bachmann locomotive. And that means that there's something different that has caught my eye and gone straight into the number 1 slot. But before we get to that, we should talk a little bit about the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway H1 Atlantic. This, in its Marsh Umber livery, really blew me away when it was first announced. So much so that I actually ordered this over the phone and told the model shop that as I was driving past within the hour, if they could get one ready, I would pay over the phone and I'd just pick it up as I drove past, which I did. And I'd like to thank Tim at Arcadia Models for helping me get hold of one of these far faster than I could have otherwise done, given that I was in a 44-ton lorry and parking is something of an issue with those things. But it really is a beautiful locomotive. The aesthetics are perfect, and Bachmann have captured them incredibly well. Whilst they have produced these in Southern Green and BR Black, for me, this is the standout livery, and I've got this plus the H2 Atlantic, which outwardly is fairly similar, both in this really attractive Marsh Umber livery. But given that this has spent so long as my favourite Bachmann locomotive, I wonder what could have gone in at number 1 and changed my mind and become my new favourite Bachmann locomotive. I'd love to hear your guesses down below in the comments. Also, don't forget that you can still pick up that Monday Club wagon. We've got a link to that down below, plus all of the merch, and you can head on over to Patreon to help support the channel and make the videos that you want to see. But it's time to find out whether you guessed correctly. And, well, I think for some people there will be no surprises given just how much I really love this locomotive during the review of this review sample that has been loaned by Rails of Sheffield. Commissioned by Rails of Sheffield from Bachmann, the Kali812 really is a locomotive that does look resplendent in the Caledonian Railway blue. They've produced this in 2 different blue liveries, both of which I am told are prototypically accurate for the pre-grouping period, although one of them is billed as the model in preservation. This is the lighter version, and I really do like it. It stands out. It's got all of that Edwardian charm that we've come to love from some of these old school locomotives, and Bachmann did not disappoint with this. Despite some of the usual suspects moaning about some minor discrepancies on the model, which in all honesty are done that way because to do them otherwise would have made them either too delicate for handling or too expensive to tool up to do, this, I feel, really is something special. Everything about this locomotive has been done to perfection as far as I am concerned. The running is faultless, and there are a number of other features such as the firebox flicker, especially on the sound version, that really do make this locomotive an incredible model. And therefore, as a surprise upset, it has just pipped the Brighton Atlantic H1 to become my number 1 pick for Bachmann ready-to-run locomotives. Well, I hope you thoroughly enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed putting together my top 10 favourite Bachmann locomotives. Were they the 10 that you thought that I would pick? And indeed, what are your top 10 favourites? Do they align with mine, or are they completely different? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Also, don't forget that you can head on over to Facebook and hang out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the Jenny Monday Club Facebook group, where like-minded people post information and updates about their own model railway and also hints and tips on how to get their modelling done. And there are still just a few Jenny Monday Club wagons still available via Rails of Sheffield, and there's a link to those too. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Today's video also comes with the support of PD Models, makers of a whole range of 3D printed kits and accessory detailing that brings something special to your model layout. Available in a number of different scales and gauges, this range is sure to have something for you, so check them out at the affiliate link down below to see what they have got today to make your model layout something special. PD models are also well known for their museum quality models that can be made bespoke to order, so do contact them if you have some specific requirements and see if they can do something special for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grantline Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N. from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Graham Foster, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 Class, Ian Coulson, and Alan Dickerson. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.